Good morning, students. Now, proceeding further, in today's lecture, I am going to explain to you all about the nuclear models. So, the question is, why do we need to have a nuclear model? The necessity to develop a nuclear model is to successfully explain the properties of the nucleus, such as nuclear binding energy, radioactivity, nuclear reactions, nuclear fission, stability of the nucleus, spin, angular momentum, magnetic momentum, its high density, etc. etc. Some of the properties we have listed in last lectures. Now, to explain all these properties, various nuclear models have been proposed. However, each of the model can explain only a limited properties of the nucleus. Out of various models, we are going to learn about liquid drop model and the shell model, which are very important. Now, the first model that you can see on the screen is nothing but the liquid drop model of the nucleus. Now, you can see here liquid drop model of the nucleus. The idea that the atomic nucleus is spherical in shape, but like a liquid drop, just like a liquid drop, was proposed by Bohr and Wheeler in 1936. Now you are familiar with this name, Bohr. So Niels Bohr is the one who proposed the famous atomic model. Okay, and the Bohr's atomic model, which explained all the properties of the atom. Okay, and therefore it was just accepted. So the same person, he just studied about the nucleus and he proposed a model for the nucleus, which is nothing but the liquid drop model of the nucleus. According to this model, the atomic nucleus is assumed to behave like a charged liquid drop with its nucleons resembling the molecules in a liquid drop. So you know what are the nucleons in the nucleus? They are nothing but the particles, constituent particles, protons and neutrons. They are combinedly called as the nucleons, correct? So these nucleons, they are very much similar to the molecules in a liquid drop. And the very first why they decided this liquid drop model is just because of the spherical shape, behave like a charged liquid drop with the nucleons resembling the molecules in the liquid drop. Okay, so there are a few similarities or the analogies. For example, the similarities between the nucleus and the liquid drop are as follows. The spherical shape of a liquid drop is due to the symmetric surface tension forces. Okay, so all of you know what are the spherical surface tensional forces. So these surface tensional forces, they are acting on the surface of a liquid which is directed in the inward direction, and because of this a liquid occupies a spherical surface. Okay, so why a spherical surface? Because mathematically a sphere has a minimum surface area for a given volume. So there is always a tendency for a liquid to occupy minimum surface area, and that is because of the property of the surface tensional forces. Similarly, the nucleus is assumed to be spherical due to the attractive nuclear forces between the nucleons, which are also acted in the inward direction. Okay, so surface tensional forces, they make the liquid drop spherical in shape. Similar to that, the attractive nuclear forces, they make the nucleus to have a spherical shape. The force of surface tension acts at every point on the surface of a liquid drop. Similarly, there is a potential barrier at the surface of a nucleus. Now, about this potential barrier, we have studied when we described about the alpha decay process. Okay, so there is a energy barrier or potential barrier surrounding the surface of the nucleus, and because of that particular barrier, a particle cannot just go exit the nucleus, or it cannot enter the nucleus unless it has got that much energy to overcome the barrier. Okay, so surrounding the nucleus, the surface of the nucleus, there is a potential barrier. In the same way, on the surface of the liquid drop, you have what is called as a surface tension. Then another analogy is what? The density of a liquid is independent of its volume. Okay, so every liquid has a particular value. For example, water has a particular value. Then the mercury has a particular value. Kerosene has a particular value. Paraffin has a particular value. So all the liquids, they have a constant density which is independent of its volume. Okay. Similarly, the density of the nucleus is independent of its volume. It is, last time we have seen in the properties, it is of the order of 10 raised to 17 kg per meter cube, okay, which is a constant for all nuclei. Okay. Then the cohesive forces between the molecules of a liquid are attractive and short range forces. Okay. The molecules of similar kind, the force existing between the molecules of similar kind, it is called as a cohesive force. And the cohesive forces between the molecules of the liquid, which are attractive in nature, and they are short range forces. So what is the short range? They are acted upon only by the nearest neighbor. Okay, so the range between the two particles should be very, very small, then only those forces are effective. Okay, so those are called as the short range forces. Similarly, nuclear forces between the nucleons are strongly attractive, that all of us know, and they are short range. Yeah, they have to be short range because the range of the nuclear itself is of the order of 10 raised to minus 15 meter. Okay, so they are short range. Then the next property is, when a liquid drop is heated, the molecules at the surface evaporate due to their increased thermal energy. So this is a common observation. When you just take water in a vessel, put it on the burner, and if you just supply the heat, after reaching a particular temperature, what happens? The water drops, they evaporate. Okay. Similarly, when an external energy is supplied to the nucleus by bombarding with a suitable projectile, a compound nucleus is formed which emits nucleons immediately. Okay, so it is very much similar to the nuclear reactions or nuclear fission process. Okay, whenever a extra or the outside energy is provided to the nucleus, the nuclear stability gets disturbed and the nucleons are emitted immediately. Then the latent heat of vaporization of the liquid is constant. What is the latent heat of vaporization? The heat required to change the liquid state to the vapor state. Whatever the energy required, that we call it as a latent heat of vaporization. And this latent heat of vaporization for a given liquid is a constant quantity. In the nucleus also, the binding energy per nucleon is constant. Okay, very similar to the latent heat. We have the constant for the nucleus is defined as the binding energy per nucleon is constant, and for a given element this is a constant quantity, and it is independent of the size of the nucleus. This binding energy is independent of the size of the nucleus. Then the last similarity is, when a small liquid drop is allowed to oscillate, it breaks up into two smaller droplets of equal size. Okay. Similarly, in a nuclear fission, a nucleus breaks up into two smaller fragments of comparable sizes. Okay. So whenever you disturb a liquid drop, the molecules of the liquid, they undergo oscillations. If the outside energy is greater than the threshold, what happens? Because of the oscillations, the liquid drop breaks into two droplets. Similarly to that, the nuclear fission is taking place in the nucleus. So this nuclear fission we are going to explain by using the liquid drop model for the nucleus. So because of all these analogies or the similarities, we can consider the nucleus as nothing but a charged liquid drop which is spherical in shape, okay, and it has the same properties as that of the liquid drop, okay. So that was the model proposed by Bohr and Wheeler. Then as I told you, we can give the explanation of nuclear fission on the basis of liquid drop model. You can see the figure here, okay, and how the nuclear fission taking place, okay. So you have 92 uranium 235 nucleus which is called as a target nucleus, okay, and it is bombarded by a neutron 0 and 1, okay. So when this neutron is just incident on this target nucleus or bombarded by this target nucleus, then what is happening? This nucleus, it absorbs this neutron and a compound nucleus is formed, that is 92 uranium 236, okay. So this compound nucleus, what is happening? So initial this uranium 235, it is shown by the spherical shape here, which is the phase A, okay, which is the phase A. In B, what is happening? You have because of the absorption of this nucleus, what is happening? The nucleons inside this, they gain the energy of the neutron and they are set into the vibrations, okay. So because of this vibrations and the extra energy gained by the nucleus, the shape of the nucleus, it just turns into a ellipse, okay. You can see the ellipse phase here. Then if the energy is more, the vibrations are very rigorous and this shape changes to a ellipsoidal form like this, more elongated it becomes like this, okay. And then if the energy is still more, what happens? It just transforms into a dumbbell shape like this, okay. Then all the positive charges, they reside on this surface of this part as well as the surface of this part, and these two positive, say, surfaces, they repel each other because like charges repel each other, and at one point they just get separated as the two fragments. This is one and this is the other, okay. They are the two nuclei which are the product of this particular fission reaction. So in the actual fission, this uranium 236 is nothing but your compound nucleus, and if the energy absorbed is greater than the threshold energy for fission, this compound nucleus, it breaks by undergoing these phases and it breaks into a barium 141 and krypton 92, and in this whole reaction on an average 2 to 3 neutrons are emitted, okay, with the tremendous amount of energy, okay, and this energy is utilized. It can be utilized for the good purpose as you have in the nuclear reactors, okay. So these neutrons which are emitted in this reaction, they are capable of producing further fission, and therefore these reactions are self-sustained. Once the reaction is initiated by this neutron, then what happens? This is 3 neutrons are produced in this, and these 3 neutrons are producing the further fission, are able to produce the further fission here. So this whole process of the nuclear fission, it can be studied by the liquid drop model, okay. So Bohr and Wheeler, they explained successfully the phenomena of nuclear fission based on the liquid drop in 1939. How did they explain? A liquid drop has spherical shape due to the surface tension that we have been telling about. When an external energy is supplied to the liquid drop, the molecules in the drop start oscillating, the same thing which I explained to you. So when they gain the energy, the molecules of the liquid, they start vibrating. If a large quantity of heat energy is supplied, the spherical shape of the drop may take a elliptical shape. If the supplied energy is still sufficiently large, the drop may take dumbbell shape from elliptical and may even break into two drops of almost equal size. So that is what happens in the liquid, and this you can see how the changes are taking place by taking a drop of mercury. Okay, so a drop of mercury, when it is very small, it is spherical in shape. If you go on adding the more and more mercury to them, it converts into the ellipsoidal form, and then if the weight of the mercury is greater than the surface tensional forces, what happens, it just splits into two droplets. Okay, so that is how it happens in the any liquid. Okay, so similar to that, we have the state of nucleus undergoing nuclear fission is shown in figure A. So those are the figures A, B, C, D, E, F. We have just represented by the different phases of the nuclear fission, which is spherical in shape. When a heavy nucleus is bombarded by a slow moving neutron, it absorbs the neutron and forms a compound nucleus as shown in figure B, okay, which is elliptical. Due to the extra energy absorbed, the compound nucleus sets up a series of rapid oscillations, because of which the shape of the nucleus changes to ellipsoidal as in figure C. If the extra energy is sufficiently large, the nucleus takes a dumbbell shape and reaches a critical state as shown in figure D. Now in the critical state, the positive charges reside at the extreme positions as in figure E. The two positive charges repel each other and result in fission as in the figure F. The last figure, two fragments are formed. Okay, so that is how a nuclear fission can be explained by using the liquid drop model, and that was one of the success of the liquid drop model. Then secondly, you can just describe or use the liquid drop model to formulate a particular formula which is called as a semi-empirical formula. Okay, so what is the meaning of semi-empirical formula? So this formula is based on the experimental data. Okay, there is no the mathematical proof for this, but this is derived or this is explained by using the experimental data, and the experimental data scientists have collected by studying the radioactivity of number of elements. Okay, the number of radioactive elements they have found out, and they have just collected all the data about the mass defect, mass, binding energy, etc., and they have formulated this formula, and therefore it is called as a semi-empirical formula. The liquid drop model can be used to obtain an expression for the binding energy of the nucleus, okay, which is formulated on the basis of experimental observations and results. The formula is called as the semi-empirical formula. Let us assume that the nucleus consists of Z number of protons and A minus Z number of neutrons. Let Mp and Mn be the mass of proton and neutron respectively. Now, if M is the mass of the nucleus, then the mass defect is given by, okay, the mass defect you have studied. What is the mass defect? Mass defect delta M is equal to sum of the masses of the free proton and neutron minus mass of the nucleus in the bound state. Okay, so this is sum of the masses of protons and neutrons in the free state, and this is the mass of the nucleus in the bound state. So there arises a difference between these two, and this difference is called as a mass defect delta M. Okay, so what is delta M? It is, there are Z number of protons present and the mass of each proton is Mp. So ZMP plus there are A minus Z number of neutrons are present and the mass of each neutron is Mn. So A minus Z into Mn. So this gives you the sum of the masses of protons and neutrons in the free state minus capital M. What is capital M? Is the mass of the nucleus in a bound state. Okay, so the difference in the two, that will give you the delta M, mass defect. Then according to the Einstein's mass energy relation, E equal to mc square. Okay, so we have the expression for binding energy as this particular delta M is converts into energy So binding energy is equal to delta M into C square. So that gives you the binding energy of the nucleus. Now in this, if B represents the binding energy expressed in mass unit, then we have the same formula. We can just rewrite as M is equal to ZMP plus A minus ZMN minus B. So this B is nothing but the binding energy. So call this as equation number 2. Now this binding energy B is made up of a number of correction terms. Okay, this is not only one or two, but there are many different, for example, 5 different correction terms. So what are they? The first one is the volume energy, which is represented BV. Okay, and second one is the surface energy, represented as Vs. Then Coulomb energy, represented as Bc. Asymmetric energy, represented as Ba, and pairing energy, represented as Bp. Okay, so we have, combining all these 5 correction terms, we have the binding energy B is given to be equal to Bv plus Bs plus Bc plus Ba and plus Bp. Okay, so it is a sum of all the 5 factors on which the binding energy of a nucleus is depending upon, and this sum of all this gives you the contribution to the binding energy of the nucleus. So we call this as equation number 3. Then we give the explanation. The first one is what? The volume energy PV. Okay, the contribution of volume energy to the nuclear binding energy is due to the mutual interaction of nucleons under the influence of nuclear forces. Okay, so the total binding energy, why do we get the binding energy, is due to the mutual interactions of the nucleons, which are in the form of under the influence of nuclear forces. And we have seen this is the force, nuclear force, which is charge independent. So we get the contribution of this due to the interaction between a proton and a proton, the neutron and a proton, and the neutron and neutron. So correspondingly we have PP forces, NN forces and NP forces. Okay, so irrespective of their charges, we have the interaction between the nucleons and under the influence of the nuclear forces. Okay, so this volume of the nucleus, we know that the volume of the nucleus is directly proportional to its mass number A. If the mass number is more, the volume obviously is more. Okay, because it has to accommodate those many number of nucleons. So hence Be, the binding energy, is directly proportional to the A number. That is, this Bv, the volume energy Bv, is directly proportional to A number. So we can change the proportionality sign to the equality sign by introducing a constant of proportionality. So therefore Bv is equal to what? Av into A. Okay, so this gives you the total contribution of the binding energy for a particular nucleus, and this binding energy is depending on which factor? On the mass number of the nucleus. Okay, Av is a constant. Experimentally the value of this Av can be determined. Okay, so this is your equation number 4. Then the second contribution of the binding energy is nothing but the surface energy, which is represented by Vs. Okay, now what is this surface energy? In a liquid drop, the molecules at the surface are not surrounded by neighbors. Okay, so these forces, the cohesive force or the nuclear force, we have seen that they are short range forces. So they exist only between the nearest neighbor. But for the molecules on the surface, they are not surrounded by the neighbors. Okay, so hence what happens? These molecules are not bound as tightly as the interior molecules. Correct? Similarly, we have in the nucleus the nucleons which are lying on the surface of the nucleus are not bound as tightly as the nucleons in the interior. Okay, interior portion. So in the similar manner, in light nuclei, the fraction of nucleons on the surface is quite large. Hence, there will be a drop in binding energy. Okay, so because of these loosely bound nucleons on the surface of the nucleus, the total contribution of the binding energy decreases. So there will be a drop in the total contribution of the energy. How much drop it will be? So it will be directly proportional to the surface area. So Bs is directly proportional to the surface area, and you know that what is the surface area for a sphere? It is 4 pi r square. Okay, surface area equal to 4 pi r square, which is directly proportional to the a raised to 2 by 3, because r is proportional to a raised to 2 by 3. Correct? So therefore Bs equal to, we change the proportionality sign to the equality by introducing again a constant of proportionality, As into a raised to 2 by 3, and this gives you the negative value. Why? Because it will decrease the total contribution of the binding energy. Correct? So where As is a constant. So this will give you the second factor or the second correction to the binding energy by equation number 5. Bs equal to minus As into a raised to 2 by 3. Okay. Then you have the third contribution. So what is the third contribution? It is the Coulomb energy Bc. This energy which reduces the binding energy due to the repulsive forces between the protons present in the nucleus. Okay. So we have been talking about the nuclear forces which are attractive forces, and the binding energy or the total nuclear forces which are binding the nucleons is only due to the nuclear forces which are strongly attractive. But still, because protons are the positively charged, they are like charges, they do repel each other, and this repelling forces, they just again decrease the total contribution of the binding energy. It can be shown that if Z is the atomic number of the element, then the contribution of the Coulomb energy is what? Directly proportional to Z into Z minus 1 upon a raised to 1 by 3. Okay. So we change again the proportionality sign to equality by introducing a constant Ac into Z minus 1 divided by a raised to 1 by 3, where Ac is a constant called as the Coulomb energy constant. Okay. So that is the another Then the next one is the asymmetric energy Ba. Okay, the fourth contribution. We know that the nuclei which contain equal number of protons and neutrons are stable in the lighter element. For example, helium, there are 2 number of protons, 2 number of neutrons. So it is a stable element. Oxygen, there are 8 number of protons, 8 number of neutrons. So it is a stable element. Okay. So for the lighter element, the number of neutron is equal to the number of proton. Okay. So it is called as the symmetric effect. Okay. But now as the value of A increases, the number of neutron also increase, and alternately binding energy decreases. So it is due to the excess number of neutrons present in the nucleus. This decrement is called as the asymmetric energy, which causes the asymmetry in the nucleus. So it can be shown that Ba is directly proportional to the excess number of neutrons. How many excess number of neutrons are present? N minus Z, where N is the number of neutrons, Z is the number of protons. Okay, so how many excess number of neutrons are there? N minus Z, the whole square upon A. Therefore, Ba is equal to minus Aa into N minus Z the whole square upon A. This N can be written as A minus Z, okay, where A is the mass number. So A minus Z minus A, that becomes equal to A minus 2Z the whole square upon A. So this is your equation 7, and Aa is a constant quantity. So this is also negative because it disturbs the total contribution of the binding energy. Okay, so it decreases the total contribution of the binding energy. Then you have the last one, which is called as a pairing energy Bp. Okay. So this pairing energy Bp, it is found that even nuclei are more stable than odd nuclei. So how do they pair with each other? So the stability of nucleus is depending upon that, and that pairing term is given by what? Bp is equal to plus or minus delta P, where delta P is equal to Ap into A raised to minus 3 by 4. So this is also obtained by using the experimental data and its analysis. Okay. Taking all these effects into account, the semi-empirical mass formula is written as, we substitute in our equation number 1, Zm equal to Zmp plus A minus Zmn minus AB into A plus AS into 2 raised to A raised to 2 by 3 plus AC into Z minus 1 divided by A raised to 1 by 3, etc., etc. Equation number 9. This is called as a semi-empirical mass formula because it leads to the mass, atomic mass of the nucleus. The semi-empirical formula for binding energy is given by what? B equal to BV plus BS plus BC. So, sum of all the factors of the binding energy corrections. So, it is given by AB into A minus AS into A raised to 2 by 3 minus AC into Z minus 1, etc., etc. This is your equation number 10, and this equation will give you what? The total binding energy of the nucleus, and this is called as a semi-empirical binding energy formula. Okay. So, nuclear fission and the analysis or finding of the binding energy of the nuclei is the success of this liquid drop model. So, we can list a few merits and demerits as in this slide. So, what are the merits? The liquid drop model of the nucleus accounts for what? One is obtaining an expression for the binding energy of the nucleus. Yeah. The second one is the stability of the nucleus. The third one is the explanation of the nuclear fission process we can do. Then calculation of the atomic masses using the semi-empirical mass formula. You can as well find out the atomic mass of the nucleus, also the binding energy of the nucleus you can find out. Okay, so that was the success of this liquid drop model or merits of the liquid drop model. What are the demerits? It could not explain the properties such that nuclear spin, it could not explain. Magnetic moment of nuclei, that also it could not explain, and high stability of nuclei with magic number, so that also it could not explain. So, what is this all? We will see in the next one, which is called as a nuclear shell model. This is called as a nuclear shell model. Now, what is a shell? Okay, so a shell is described, you can see here, a shell is described as the energy level where particles having the same energy exist. Okay. So, now to understand this nuclear shell model, we have to go back to the atomic shell model. Okay. So, in the atomic shell model, we have studied, according to this model, the situation of nucleons in the nucleus resembles that of electrons in an atom. Okay. So, Bohr's atomic model, if you just remember all the assumptions, we can see that the shell model of the atom explains the arrangement of different electrons in the orbits around the nucleus as per the energy level. So, it is the electrons are not orbiting in all the possible energy levels, but they can have only those orbits called as the stationary orbits. Okay, they are possible and they will get occupied or exist in only those stationary orbits. Okay, so you can see here in the figure it is shown the structure of the nucleus. At the center you have a structure of the atom, at the center you have a nucleus. In the first shell you have how many number of electrons are there? There are 2 number of electrons, and this first shell, it is called as a K shell. Okay. Then in the second shell, how many number of electrons are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So there are 8 number of electrons in the second shell. Okay. The second energy level. So it is called as a L shell. Then you have in the third shell, there are how many number of? 18 number of electrons are accommodated, which is called as a M shell. Okay. So K, L, M, N, O, P, etc. So there are outer orbits or number of, as the element A number goes on increasing and increasing, you have the further shells described for the electrons here. So that is how electrons get fitted or according to their energy levels. Okay, according to their energy levels. Then in the nuclear shell model, it is a model of the atomic nucleus which uses the Pauli's exclusion principle to describe the structure of nucleus in terms of energy levels. Then how do the particles in the nucleus they accommodate a particular energy level. They exist in a particular energy level. So they obey the Pauli's exclusion principle. So according to the Pauli's exclusion principle, there are 4 quantum numbers are assigned to every elementary particles. Okay, so you have principal quantum number, orbital quantum number, spin quantum number, and magnetic moment quantum number. Okay, so all these 4 quantum numbers are assigned to every particle inside the nucleus. And according to the Pauli's exclusion principle, any two particles cannot have all the 4 quantum numbers same. At least their spin should be different. Then only they can have or they can exist in the same energy level. So these shells, they are filled according to the Pauli's exclusion principle in the nucleus. Okay, and which is exactly similar to the filling up of the shells in the as in the electrons. Okay, the arrangement of different electrons in the orbits, it is exactly same to that. Now the sequence in which the electrons occupy the shell is given as, you have 2, 8, 18, 32, 50, 72, etc. Okay, so what is the common factor here? The maximum number of electrons that can occupy the energy level in an atom is found by using the formula 2n square, where n is the principal quantum number. So if n is equal to 1, then the number of electrons that occupy that level is 2. In the K shell, only 2 electrons are there. If n is equal to 2, so 2 square is 4, 4 into 2, 8. So in the second shell, that is L shell, 8 electrons can accommodate. Then n equal to 3, okay, so 18, n equal to 4. So you can further calculate and see. So electron capacity equal to 2n square, where n is the principal quantum number. Okay, very similar to this filling of the shells in the new electrons, we have the filling of the shells in their in the nucleus also. Okay, the atoms with 2, 8, and then what is the speciality of this? The atoms with 2, 8, 18, 32, 50, 72, etc. electrons have their electron shells completely filled. Okay, so such atoms are stable atoms and chemically inert atoms. They don't react very easily. Okay, so because of these numbers, because of the complete filled shells, they don't undergo the reactions, and therefore they are found to be stable. The atoms are found to be stable. Similar situation is found with the nucleus also. Nuclei having the numbers 2, 8, 20, 28, 50, 82 and 126, number of nucleons of the same kind, either protons or neutrons, are found to be more stable than the nuclei of the neighboring mass numbers. These numbers are called as magic numbers. So these numbers which I have mentioned here, these are called as the magic numbers of the nucleus. The neutrons and proton shells appear to be independent of each other. Now what are these magic numbers? What are these magic numbers? The atomic nuclei containing 2, 8, 20, 28, 50, 82, 126, number of nucleons, either protons or neutrons, okay, have exceptional stability. Okay, so these numbers are called magic numbers. The extraordinary stability of nuclei with magic numbers can be explained on the basis of nuclear shell model. Okay, for example, we can see helium Z equal to 2. Okay, so 2 is a magic number. So helium is a stable element. Oxygen Z equal to 8. So this is a magic number. So they are stable. Calcium Z equal to 20, and A is also equal to A is equal to 40. So calcium and tin, they have both proton number and neutron number is a magic number, and therefore they have large number of stable isotopes present. Okay, so for calcium Z equal to 20, and also the neutron number is also equal to 20. So both the numbers are the magic numbers. For tin also, both the numbers are the magic numbers. So they have the exceptional stability. Then the end product of all three natural radioactive series, radium, thorium and actinium, are lead isotope. Again, the Z number is 82, which is nothing but a magic number. So all these numbers, number of nucleons, either protons or neutrons or both, okay, if they have these numbers, the nuclei have the exceptional stability, and that is related to the filling up of the energy levels in the nucleus, which is nothing but the nuclear shell model, which explains the filling up of the shells or filling up of the energy levels in the nucleus. So this nuclear shell model, it gives the explanation for the existence of the magic number and the exceptional stability for these magic numbers. Okay. Then what are the merits and demerits? It could explain the magic numbers and the exceptional stability of the nuclei. Even number of protons and neutrons are found to be more stable, and the odd number are less stable. Again, due to the pairing, it accounts to predict the total angular moment of the nuclei. So these are all the merits of this. It could not explain, however, the excited state of even nuclei, the magnitude of nuclear quantum pole movement, the probability of radioactive transition, and the magnetic moment of some nuclei. Okay, so these are the positive points or the advantages of this particular nuclear shell model. These are the disadvantages of the nuclear shell model. Okay, so for some properties we make use of the liquid drop model, and for some other properties we make use of the nuclear shell model. There is another model which is the advanced one, which is called as a collective model. Probably when you go for your MSc, you will be learning there what is a collective model, which will give the explanation of all the particular properties of the nuclear model. But whatever is easy, for those particular properties we make use of the suitable model for the nucleus. Okay, so that is the about the nuclear models, and in the next class we are going to study about the nuclear that is accelerators. Okay, so one of the accelerator, the basic one, we are going to study linear accelerator. Okay, linear accelerator. So today we'll stop here. You all study all the three whatever I have given, the lectures, nuclear physics lecture 1, lecture 2 and lecture 3. Study well. In the next class I am going to give you a short quiz, the 2 marks question. I will list and give you on the WhatsApp group. You have to answer them and mail me. Okay, I will correct and see how far you have understood. So for today we'll stop here. Thank you.